All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. You're here with Tom and George, and the world's going crazy. So we got a lot to talk about. There was a jobs number today. We want to go through that, what the ramifications of that are, talk about interest rates, talk about the world events, talk about war, talk about oil. So things are going crazy right now. Bitcoin has had a pullback. What are you thinking, George?
I'm thinking that it's pandemonium is what I'm thinking. Everything's crazy. The world's crazy. The war's crazy. Bitcoin action. They faked us out again.
Got us again.
They got us. I think Bitcoin's going. I'm like, yes, one day in the 70s. Tom said 8 days. So all it's going to be in the 70s. I didn't expect it to go back down.
They got us again. But we'll talk about what's coming next.
There's always tomorrow.
There's a lot going. I called this one something like all hell's breaking loose because people's hair is on fire right now, and I want to go through it because it's two things. By one regard, I say that because there's a lot of gigantic geopolitical stuff going on that we absolutely need to talk about. It does affect our investments. By the second token, a lot of people are freaking out about stuff that's, I believe, not very meaningful at all. I think there's, once again, knee-jerk reactions. I talked Tuesday on the members only about the fact that jobs numbers were coming out on Friday, and the stock market usually loses their mind with these numbers. And by the way, we're going to go through why I believe that those numbers are, I don't know if it's fair to say meaningless, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think those numbers are, for all intents and purposes, meaningless. We're going to go through them in detail, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean and why I don't. It makes no sense to trade off of those numbers. If you're trading off of, other than, I will tell you, if the market panics and something hits your price target, they do represent buy the dip options. But all these people that sell everything because of one number that they know for a fact is going to be changed not once, not twice, but 3 more times, and has often flipped from a positive number to a negative number or vice versa. They're so wrong, it's laughable. So we're going to definitely talk about that because that's what drove a lot of today's price action. But just in general, this was not a great week. The Bitcoin miners got wrecked yesterday. They got wrecked worse today. Right, there was a gigantic big green day in the middle where everything was through the roof. So it was like, everything's awful. Everything's fantastic. Everything's awful. Which one is it? So, oh, by the way, if you would be so kind, if you could please smash the like button, hit the thumbs up button. It does help us out in real time a lot. I want to get to 2 comments. Sour Melon Gaming, thanks for being a member. Thanks for the super chat. Sour Melon Gaming said, if the market corrects, these stocks are screwed. So we will talk more about that because, these stocks just pulled back so massively in the last 2 days. But here's the thing, like, they're all still trading. I wasn't able to buy anything in the last 2 days because there's not one of these stocks that got down to the number that it was at the last time I bought the dip within the last, month. So we're not even at local lows yet. I don't think we're even going to get back to local lows for most of these, but we're going to talk about that too. We're going to see what you guys think because a lot of people think the sky is falling. We're going to have to talk about the geopolitical situation, I'll call it. I don't want to get the stream too cut off by saying trigger words, but there's stuff going on I'm sure you guys are all aware of, and it's affecting oil. So we're going to talk about oil because that is a gigantic panic right now, and I'm going to show you why I think it doesn't need to be. I think that...
Holy smokes!
Did you just look at oil?
$1. Oh my goodness!
I knew that. That's the reaction of somebody that just looked at oil.
Yeah, we was sitting in the 60s and then went to 71. I was like, oh, no big deal. Go figure. Oil goes up when a war happens. Shucks.
I have a bunch of...
I didn't ever think that was going to happen, Tom.
Yes, real Shocker. But I'm going to go through some articles and I'm going to talk about why. And you said something, this was off air. You and I had a conversation and you were spot on. And I got an article about it today. We're going to get to that. It's about oil and it's about why I think it's going to start moving soon, because actually I think it was on the members only stream that you mentioned this, George. And it's completely correct.
Well, thank you, Tom.
And I think that well, we will get there and you'll see. I think that the problem is solved. So we'll talk about that. Gambit Beer, member for 41 months. Thank you very much, Gambit Beer.
Long time, Tom.
Yeah, we've been here a while. For those of you that are new, we're here every Friday. So come join us, and thank you to all the members who have been with us for so long.
Yes, thank you. 4:30-ish. Sorry.
4:30, you know, plus, minus. I made a dedication to start on time, but it's so hard to get. There's so much information coming out right now. It's like, it's insanity. So getting my notes together is, so I apologize. I was a few minutes late today. But moving on, I want to get to Gambit Beer, who said, when is the really big crash going to happen? Tom, have you saved any reserves for the big dip? Or you believe Trump will save the stock market? So I will tell you, I've been methodical. I've been buying the dips. But like I said, yesterday and today, I bought nothing. So I've made purchases. We'll go through some of those later. But for me, even on the days that look like the best buying opportunity ever, I really try to, in a disciplined way, dollar cost in with, my amount that I use. I don't all of a sudden go, well, it's down, I'm all in. I'm backing up the truck. Now, I did make a big trade, which I have had 2 trades in the last year and a half. Right now, they're both going very well, but I very rarely trade a bunch of stocks and buy other stocks. So I track those specifically when I do that. And I haven't done much of that. So, my dollar cost averaging is pretty methodical. So no, I haven't spent everything, but I have. I can't be I know I'm not the only one getting sick of buying the dip. It's time for the other side of this equation. Having said that, if and when the other side of this equation comes, it's going to be an unbelievably good thing for me that I had all this time to buy the dip. There's positions that, some of my older positions I've added 25% to. Some of my newer positions I've doubled or tripled in size because of the amount of time we've been going sideways and having buying opportunities. So, if it all works out in the end, this is all phenomenal. While we're going through it, it's awful. It's volatility beyond. Just look at today's board. You would think this was the disaster of all disasters. Bitcoin was down 4.5%. Marathon almost 9%. Riot 9%. CleanSpark 7%. IREN 8.5%. CIFR 10%. TeraWolf almost 10%. Etc. 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 You would think this was a disaster, except yesterday was exactly as bad. So we get these days, and there was a day in the middle where everything was through the roof, up 10%, 15%, 20%. So this is the volatility game. These are the games that they play with us. And the question really for me is, I'm going to dollar cost average in, and is this going where I think it's going, this year? So we got out of the short-term price target game a long time ago, because the manipulation can continue. Having said that, I will go to the 1 day and show you, I said it when it happened, and I will stand by this. I do think these 2 days right here at the beginning of February, that was a local bottom. I think it was crystal clear, and I'll just spend a second because we've talked about this a lot, but I got to move the chart up so I can show you the volume. You've got, I didn't even move it up enough. That's how much. So look at the outsized gigantic volume. This candle, we went down, right? This is from open to close, a $10,000 red candle. I believe that's the first $10,000 red candle in the history of Bitcoin. So that's the worst red candle we've ever had. And then turn around from bouncing off the bottom to the close at the top. This is a $10,000 candle. The next day, only it's green. So these are two of the biggest candles we've ever had in the history of Bitcoin on super high volume. And we bounced almost precisely off of $60,000. It hit $60,001.00. And there must have been somebody wanted to beat whoever had their price orders in to buy at 60,000. This person was ahead of them, and they bought it at $60,001. That was the bottom. We haven't retested it since. It's now a month later. This green line at around 63,000 has held. We almost had a breakout. So yesterday I talked about, and we weren't on live yesterday, but yesterday we had a breakout above 70,000. And I'm going to talk about how I believe that once we confirm a breakout above 70,000, we're going to run to 80,000. There's, I'll use the article that I found today, but this is what I've been talking about for months. They call it an air pocket. There's a bubble. Bitcoin doesn't trade between 70 and 80,000. The problem is we did not confirm this candle. So we had this big green candle, and it looked big enough that it looked like, you know what? Here we go. But like George said, fooled again, because, now within 2 days, big red candle, relatively speaking, big red candle, and we're back under 70,000. We're at 68,300 right now. So that confirmation failed. We did not break above 70,000. And then for me, I like to see a daily candle close and then another daily candle go up and confirm it. We didn't get it. And so now we're back below it. That doesn't mean we can't turn back around, but we're, over the weekend, we're going to figure out, and probably really Monday morning when the U.S. equity markets open, we're going to know within an hour, which side of this line we're on. Are we going to make that run from 70 and try to run to 80, or did we hit the top of our range and we're still just going sideways? So I like this setup a lot less than I did 5 days ago. That's all I'll say. And I don't think we're going back to new lows. I just think one of the possibilities that we talked about that I think is the most probable outcome of all of the technical analysis is that we have bottomed out, but we got to go sideways for a while and bounce around before we get that next big move up. So it was going to be a pleasant surprise if it came this fast. I'm not expecting it this fast. History shows that usually what comes next is just some of this sideways nonsense that makes people crazy, especially with, your stock going down 10%, up 15%, down 8%, down 10% the next day. I mean, this is enough to make people nuts. So
it's made me nuts, Tom.
Well, it does. It's crazy. It's very difficult to, buy and hold in this environment. It's very tempting to swing trade. I do that very rarely, and I do it with options if I do it.
Gamut is saying that he thinks it's the 4-year anniversary for the 10K challenge, and I'm afraid to look it up.
I wouldn't look it up, and now it's kind of.
We ran up to $9,000. Remember that? I mean.
Yeah, that's the volatility that this has been. And we bought in on the worst day possible. Sourmelon Gaming.
Every day's been bad in this industry.
Yeah, well, there was a great day in the middle. There was one of the best. It was so green, it's insane. Sourmelon Gaming saying, Tom, these could very easily hit lows again. These companies, from a stock perspective, are not very stock. People will sell out fast and easily. Not very strong. is what he meant to say. So, I mean, we'll see. I think you're going to see some strong lines of support for most of these stocks, and there are buyers. This has been, February was bad. This is shaping up the way last year did. January was great. It looked like 2025 was going to be off to the races, and then February, March, April, the first half of May they were a nightmare. And I hope we don't have to relive that period of time, but it would be pretty much spot on with George's tale of, two halves of a year, which basically was that first half of the year, watch out, duck and cover. In the second half of the year, here we go. So we'll see if that's how it plays out. I see someone saying, so far the cycle looks exactly like the previous one. So I will tell you, a lot of people look at this and say, this looks like previous cycles. I don't believe that. And I think there's a lot of data points that are very different in this. If you're looking at one particular thing and saying, how many days was it from the halving until the all-time high? That number is very similar to the previous couple of cycles. If, counting when we ran up to 126,000 in October. So a lot of people are looking at that going, see, forget everything else. That's the cycle. But that's one data point. There are a lot of other data points where this cycle was already demonstrably different than anything that's ever happened before. The first thing is we hit a new all-time high before the halving. That's never happened. So before we even got to the halving, this cycle was already not like the other cycles. Now, we're not done, so I don't want to speak too soon, but this was about a 50% pullback. Crypto winters are more like somewhere between 75 and 90% pullback, and that is a dramatic difference. Now, if we're talking altcoins, I do think we are in a crypto winter, altcoin crypto winter right now, and I got an article about altcoins later. But for Bitcoin, I was calling for a 40% bear market, and we got to 50%. And I feel comfortable about that. Now, if we get to 60, 70, 80, then I'm wrong. And it won't be the first time, and it won't be the last. But I personally have conviction that we're bouncing off the bottom. Barring any one particular giant candlewick on one day, Bitcoin can do what it does. But, I look at the daily closes, and I don't think you're going to see things lower in a material way. That's my opinion. Let's see what your opinion is. Let's get a poll started.
Yep, time for a poll. You got it?
Yes.
If I had to guess, it's probably around $2,000, the 10K challenge. Missed it by that much.
That's insanity. Okay, let me just give a couple options here. All right, let's see what you guys think. So these are the options. Okay, what's Bitcoin's next move? So are we going down? First choice, are we going to retest 60,000? I really think that's a strong line of support. I certainly would not be surprised if we bounced off of 60,000 again. That is so typical maneuver for Bitcoin and for a lot of stocks to retest that bottom. Or is it getting worse? Are we going down to 50,000? Are we going down to 40,000? Or worse? Or finally, did we bottom out and we're going up from here? So which way, what's next? Gambit Pierce saying oil wells in the Middle East are going to start shutting down if the strait is closed for much longer. So should we talk about that now? Should we just get to that, or wait for more people to get here? By the way, if you could be so kind and smash the thumbs up button, the like button, it does help the stream in real time. We want to reach people.
You know, this is just another one of those great things of how they use this to scare us with this oil thing bullshit. We're not going to have any situation with oil. We know, you know it. I'm not saying the rest of the world won't.
I'm still waiting for that oil crisis from 74.
Yeah, I know. That was true.
When I was standing in line for oil in 1974, and based on what your first letter of your last name was which day of the week you could buy oil, and because we were running out. So that was almost 50 years ago. That's my perspective on the matter. Now, that doesn't mean there's not short-term supply squeezes.
But they had to get something to get some pressure on oil.
I gotta find my oil section here. Okay, so first, okay. Crude oil's almost $91. So if I look at a 1 month on this, actually I'll look at a 6 month, because we were sideways for a long time in this, call it the $60 range. Yeah, we got down to 54. Yeah, we got up to 65, but it was hanging out at 60 bucks. And that's a sweet spot for oil. Everybody kind of wins at that spot. But look at this. It's gone ballistic, right? This was at 64 on February 26th. That's only a little over a week ago. It's now over 90. So
91 to be exact.
We all know exactly why. And here's the deal. Let me get there. We were talking about this on the members only stream, and basically you've got the Strait of Hormuz, or however you pronounce that. 20+% of the world's oil is trafficked through there every day. So it is a massive channel of oil. It's shut down right now. Temporarily, sort of. The people are afraid to cross. And George brought up a really good point. The biggest reason they're afraid to cross right now is the insurance companies basically said, hey, there's a war going on. We're not insuring your ships and your oil if you're going to go run across there in the middle of a war.
If you're going to go.
If you're going to go off. And so here, this is what happened. This is today. Trump admin announces a $20 billion reinsurance program for oil tankers during the war. The U.S. International Department Finance Corporation will insure losses up to $20 billion on a rolling basis. U.S. crude oil prices have surged more than 12% Friday, topping $90 per barrel, as tanker traffic in the Persian Gulf remains at a standstill due to the war. Tankers are unlikely to start moving through this. So this is what this article says, and here's where I'm going to push back. Tankers are unlikely to start moving through the Strait of Hormuz again until the security situation improves, analysts say. That's what they want you to believe. That's why oil's $91. But George, you nailed this before anybody said a word about it. You said it's the insurance companies, and once they get insured, they're going to sell their freaking oil. And I will bet you that George is 100% right. This insurance program is going to get oil. Let me put it in perspective. They have passenger airplanes now in the region. So, yes, the war is midstream, but phase one is long since over. And, you know, I don't want to get into too many details, but the bottom line is the security risk is low. The United States has said that they will have their destroyers escort these tankers across the strait. They will now insure them on top of that. There's really no reason for business people not to conduct business. So I think as soon as potentially Monday, you're going to see, it's not going to be the blink of an eye. You're going to see the beginning of a return towards business as usual. I think within 2 weeks, oil's going to be down significantly from where it is today. And this will all have been another big FUD. This is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That is my opinion. Drop in the comments. Maybe we'll do a poll if you guys think I'm crazy. But this is what's happening. And there's no reason not to move the oil through there at this point. And oh, by the way, there's an awful lot of oil left in a lot of other places, right? That's 20% of the world's oil moves through there. And there are countries that puts a lot of pressure on. So I understand it is short-term pain. But remember, these oil and gas companies buy futures contracts months out, 6 months out, a year out. So like these blips, they're not meaningful to big oil because they've already done futures contracts selling all of this and hedging their bets in both directions. So, you know, if a year from now we're at $130, okay.
Oh my goodness, I'm dying over here.
What's happening? What am I missing?
Nothing, just being funny. You weren't supposed to talk about that, Katie.
Larry said, I think oil will come down as well, Tom, in a couple of weeks. So there's somebody that agrees with me. Thank you, Larry. I just think it's what makes sense. In a lot of ways, while the situation continues, the safety risk, the risk equation has shifted dramatically. You know, we're now 1 week into this, and it's very different than it was on day 1 or day 2 or day 3. And day 7 and by day 10, etc.
That's awesome, dude. That makes me the happy man, by the way, Harrison. I was able to pay off my house. You would think that we have these planted. We don't. We don't do that. We don't ever.
No, these are all real comments.
Yeah, these are. I'm in shock. That's awesome. That's the best news I heard today.
Congratulations.
That's awesome.
Harrison also said oil will be down by next Tuesday. And then
I just don't know how it can keep going up, Tom. I mean,
Manny,
first of all, there's no demand for it. You know, from a
right. This is right.
Demand for oil, but there's no like intense demand.
There's currently no shortage. This is all about anticipation. Oh, the strait's shut down. It could stay shut down for days, weeks, months. This is a forever war. That's another conversation we may or may not have because
but do you know how much money? Because like I factored in, like if XRP moves 10 cents, I'm a very happy man. And it just takes 10 cents. And think about that with oil, because you got the prince over there, right? Or the king or whatever he is. And if oil goes up $10, he makes like another $5 billion a day. It's unfathomable how much money this guy makes.
Well, just look at, as an example, Saudi Arabia. I'll let you guys look it up, but if you look at what their cost per barrel is, you will fall out, unless you're already in the know, you're going to fall out of your chair. They make money at oil at any price.
I think it's $25, $26.
It's even less than that.
Oh, is it
it's
really?
Shocking.
Wow.
They have a machine that flows. And the thing is, we keep finding more and more and more oil. We just freed up one of the world's largest oil reserve, although it's not the highest quality oil reserve in Venezuela, was going to waste because the infrastructure had withered away. They were only able to pump, 10 or 15% of the capacity, and that amount was basically being smuggled to, not any of the places that most of us are. That equation has changed completely, right? They've sent like 80 or 100 million barrels to the U.S. since that situation has changed. So, and that's the proverbial tip of the iceberg. That is the beginning of that. And by the way, that is, I think it's heavy crude oil, and all the refineries for that are in Texas, just straight up what is now the Gulf of America. So that infrastructure was set up that way for a reason. That's the international companies set up in Venezuela to drill for that oil, and they were going to refine it in Texas. And then, things went sideways in Venezuela. So all this is really doing is going back to the way it was set up to be. That's where the refineries are. So I think you're going to see a monumental amount of oil come online. This is a temporary traffic jam, if you will, in some of the oil from the Middle East. But I don't think it's going to last. That's just my opinion. We'll see. I mean, we're going to know. Obviously, time will tell.
But I'll tell you what, if it does, inflation is going to be crazy in the United States.
I'm reading Gambit Beer. The shipping lane is 3 miles wide at points opposite IREN. The combined audience of this show could take out. Well, you say that. I'm not going to go through the rest of that because I don't want the stream to get banned from YouTube, but it's not that simple. And, if you are escorted by destroyers with ships in front of them that are sweeping for mines, the fear is not an attack. It's that, there's mines been put throughout the strait and you don't want to accidentally run into one. But I mean, we are at a point where, our ships move through there all day, every day, no problem. So, we know it can be done. It's just, to George's earlier point, if you got $1 billion worth of oil and ship, and it's not insured, you're not moving it anywhere, and you're right not to. It's too big of a risk. It would be irresponsible. But now, you're back completely insured. And you know what? I don't know. I cannot guarantee that no ship ever will come to any harm. But if it does, there's an insurance program in place. And, hopefully that wouldn't result in the loss of any human life. Somebody's saying there's no way to escort anything. Well, I don't know if you know how escorting works, but that's I'll just leave it. I agree.
It is a PR stunt. It is. All of this, everything going on is a PR stunt, my friend. The video is handpicked what they show us,
I will also say we've seen very little in the way of video and live coverage of this war, in my opinion, versus, warfare over the last 20 or 30 years has kind of been live and televised. And the information seems to be a lot more filtered on all sides this time around. So I'm not sure what that's all about. I think it could have a lot to do with the fact that this is a much bigger operation and they just don't want operational details coming out until they're done.
What is it? I shouldn't even say it, but is it? I go, one of the places I use, I'm sure we're getting screwed for this one, but I use RT.com all the time.
I don't know what that is. Is that?
It's
we'll
a
just
Russian,
leave it at that.
Yeah, it's a Russian website. And it just, I like looking like I use that, and then I use which the British one. It seems like they have all the news stories of the United States before we do the good ones. Um, not the BBC. What is it? The the Daily News. Is that it?
The Daily
Wire? No,
the
the
Daily
Daily.
Wire is the conservative organization.
No, there's another one over there from the UK that seems to break everything.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. But I mean, the BBC is their almost state
BBC.
sponsored.
Yeah. Maybe it's, I don't know. But there's another one. It's kind of cheesy looking, right? Same with RT.com. It's a very cheesy looking thing.
Well, the
But
truth is a hard commodity to come by these days on any topic.
yeah, if you guys want to watch if you want to go to a decent website, it shows like both sides. It's called ground.news. I should probably get them to sponsor us, but
I was just going to say that they are not a sponsor, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because you see like people vote for it, whether it's like more of a left leaning or right leaning or a center. I consider myself in the center.
I should use that because I take the scenic route and I actually watch all the different news outlets to compare and contrast. But this thing kind of filters and sorts them for you. Like, here's your left leaning articles. Here's your right leaning articles. Here's the ones that we think are more neutral. And I just want to go to a comment from Sour Melon Gaming. George has made a lot of spot on calls and basically no one ever gives him credit for them. So let's just take a moment and thank George for
welcome.
A bunch of spot on calls.
You know what's so great is when you're successful in life, you don't need credit. You know what I mean? Trust me. Thank you, appreciate it, but I'm blessed and highly favored. So, I mean, that's how I look at life.
And hopefully, and that's why we're all here trying to do this together. That's why I ask people to hit the like button and get some more people here because we're trying to.
Did you? Oh, he brought it up. I got to say something.
Oh, boy, go ahead.
Did you hear? I think I can kind of say this in code. There was a Super Bowl in 23. The United States, the NFL had a Super Bowl. And supposedly that night, the FBI got hacked and lost over 3 billion. I don't know if it's images, photos, texts, whatever it was. And
some information breach.
Yes, out of the New York City location. And what was interesting is why the New York City location always had the information. You should have just seen the article I read about Tampa, Tom. Dude, this guy was everywhere.
I don't know what it is. Can you talk about it, or it's not?
Yeah, I mean, he had an in for females out of Texas. I mean, out of Tampa.
He had a who for what?
He had an in for dates. And it happened to be like schools. It was, dude, this thing has to be fixed, what happened. And it never will be. And that's what really sucks. It will go away and no one's ever going to ever do anything. And it's just going to be.
Whatever's in the news cycle seems to pass along rather quickly these days. So.
Well, I won't even talk about the other thing I heard with Congress because it gets into politics, and it's just sad. But basically, it doesn't matter. It's the uniparty. They're happy with the status quo. They want to protect their stock market. They want to protect, I guess that's the best way to put it, right?
It's, a lot of people look at politics and we try not, we talk about, there are certain pieces of politics that affect investing. And so ignoring them, you can't stick your head in the sand. So you gotta look at it. But I think, one of the things George is trying to talk about is it feels like whether you're on the right or on the left, whether you're, conservative or liberal, it feels like once you get to Washington, D.C., it doesn't seem to matter. You're just a part of that club, and that club is not us.
Right.
So I do think there's a lot of truth to that.
I know. Yeah,
there's bad things going on in the world. The world's a dangerous place. It's a terrible place.
There was a person I used to listen to. His name was Brother Wheeze. He was from Rochester, New York.
Oh my.
Brother Wheeze. He used to say, it's amazing that the Pusada, does that make sense? Rules the world. Sorry, I have a speech impediment. If that makes sense. The Pusada. So
I don't know.
Well, it rhymes with that.
Ah.
It rules it.
I'm just reading the comments.
Yeah, but Katie, she got out. I think she made $30 million. I mean, I think I would get out too. What do you need more than $30 million?
Who made $30 million?
MTG.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because they get to legislate, and then they get to approve. They get to, I mean, there's so much that they know ahead of time. You know what I mean? That of course they're going to make money.
Well, and I see people, the comments are talking about the oil going to $100 a barrel, and I don't. It's at 90. I'm not going to be shocked if it hits 100 in the middle. I just feel like this is a very short-term thing, and it's going to fix itself. You want to poll on oil, Gambit Beer?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So let's take a look at what this poll is saying. Bitcoin's next move: retest 60, first place, 44%. Go down to 50,000, 13%. Go down to 40,000 or below, 13%. Only 29%, so almost 70-30, think it's going to go down before it goes up. So that's where we are on Bitcoin. Where are we on oil?
Gambit, did you like my answer? 3 beers. Is she pretty? 3 beers. I don't drink, so. I think again, psychologically, I think it will hit 100 because then people can say, oil's at 100, and then all they're going to hear is, oil's at 100. I'm not for the war, by the way. Just so you know, I'm kind of, I wasn't for it. But
So,
I guess I understand it, but.
Listen, I don't think anybody's wholeheartedly for war. It gets a lot more complicated than that, though. But I would hope that people aren't just, in general, for war. So I'm going to ask the first of two-part question, which is, the first poll is, what will oil hit? $90 where it already is. So in other words, is it already at its high right now? Is it going to hit $100? Is it going to hit $125? Is it going to go to $150 a barrel or above? 150 or above is a big problem.
100 is a big problem.
100's nasty. 150 is a nightmare.
Dude, 150, there goes the stock market. Don't you agree or no?
Yeah, I think that's going to be, that's what I'm saying. 150 is a problem.
We get to 150, yeah, I would, what is it, short the SPY? Is that it? Is that what that thing is?
The SPY tracks the S&P 500.
Right, so I'd short it.
Short it?
Yeah.
Ethan's saying 150 or above in the comments.
Wow. I hope you're wrong. I put 100. I mean, it's almost a guaranteed now.
What's the first half of that? can't remember what that acronym. I know what it is. It's a taco is basically about Trump chickening out.
Oh, I thought it was something perverted.
I thought it was.
Oh,
I'll just leave it at that.
I thought it was some.
Harrison said 90 is the top. Gambit Beer saying QQQs. The Qs follow the NASDAQ 100. And
200.
most of the stocks that we talk about, or that actually really most people talk about on YouTube, are really NASDAQ stocks. Your blue chip stocks are on the New York Stock Exchange, but the world of tech and cutting edge stuff is all over on the NASDAQ. So that's why the QQQs are a little bit more volatile than the S&P 500. Although at this point, the top 7 companies make up such an unbelievably outsized percentage of the S&P 500, they're becoming very similar in nature.
Dude, who comes up with this stuff? The taco. That is awesome.
Trump always chickens out. That's been around for, I don't know. That's a thing. And I don't even want to touch it because it automatically, no matter what I say about that, 50% of people will be agitated. So
I'm agitated.
Is there somehow I can agitate 100% of everybody? Yes, by asking to please smash the like button, the thumbs up. Can you see where we're at, George, on likes?
45-ish, hang on.
Wow,
Let
brutal.
me update it. I mean, it might be more. 54. We're getting there.
Tough day. That's a low one.
You didn't chicken out with Iran.
Well, here's the other half of that. So this also was today. Trump says no deal with Iran to end the war without, quote, unconditional surrender. So, here's what I'll say. We'll see. And the reason I say that is, first of all, unconditional surrender is a famous quote. That's what the United States demanded at the end of World War II, was unconditional surrender.
What does that mean?
That means surrender with no conditions. You can't say I'll surrender, but I want to do this, and this, or I'll stop fighting, but I want this in return and that in return. No, unconditional means you surrender. We dictate the terms of what happens next. Period.
Tom, did you hear that there was a relationship with Britain, with the oil, with Iran?
No, I did not.
And that they basically controlled their oil, and it's an interesting thing. And basically that's what Trump is really breaking up.
An UK-Iran oil relationship?
Remember when Trump went over and met with the Queen, and he walked in front of her?
Yes.
And everybody had a big to-do. That was supposedly something bigger than we could ever possibly imagine.
I'm just going to address BVD, who is a member. We'll talk about IREN next, because what they did is pretty wild. So we'll get to some more specific stocks in a minute. So the reason I say we'll see what happens is, and it ties right into the taco, which is Trump always chickens out. There are people that perceive, and you can perceive it either way. I'm just here.
$6 billion?
Here's where, wait for it.
Wow.
Here's where I can make everybody mad. Trump always chickens out. There's two interpretations to that. Number one, you can say that he says something and then he stops short of that, and so he's chickening out and not following through on it. Number two, you can say he starts with an extreme position as a point of negotiating and winds up somewhere near the place that he wanted to be to begin with, which you don't have to write the book on negotiating, which he did do, to understand, like, that is negotiation 101. So, maybe sometimes it's one and maybe sometimes it's the other. I don't know. But I do think in this instance, starting with unconditional surrender is probably not where he thinks this is going to end. That's just my opinion. And you can say it's because he's going to chicken out, or you can say it's because what he really wants is A, B, C, D. And he knows if he just asks for A, B, C, D, they're going to start negotiating from that point. So he's starting negotiating from, you will unconditionally surrender, which is how, by the way, that's how every war in history has ended until the modern day. So unconditional surrender is the end result of war by its nature. And again, I'm not a war person. I'm not cheering for a war. I don't want any wars. I'm just talking about thousands of years of history. That's how it works. So with that said, modern warfare has changed. And I do think there's probably a different agenda than this on the table, where everybody can come out in a better place. The Iranian people can come out in a much better place than they're in right now. And hopefully, that's my hope for where all this goes. Let this be as quick as it can be, as the least disruptive that it can be, the least amount of deaths that it can be, and have the Iranian people end up in a much better place than they were in before this started. At this point, the war's happening, so there's nothing anybody can do about that. So that, to me, that's what we can hope for.
Frankie goes to Hollywood. War. What is it good for?
That is not Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Definitely not.
It ain't?
Are you kidding me?
Yes, it is.
Frankie Goes to Hollywood is relax, and I'm not even going to go any further than that.
Okay.
For those of you who remember, you remember the song. That was in the movie.
What is it good for?
The movie that was in the movie Body Double. For anybody that didn't see that back in the day, great mystery thriller film. Absolutely nothing, George. That's your answer. That's what it's good for. Let's talk about this poll and then move on, and we'll talk about IREN, because this was an eye popper. What will oil hit? So 19% think we're at 90 and that's it. That's as high as we're going. In first place, 35% think we're gonna hit 100. So listen, we can't be shocked if we at 90. We cannot be shocked if we hit 100. 27% think we're gonna hit 125. 19% think we're going to hit 150 or below. So not quite half of you think we're going to be north of $125,000. Or sorry, $125 per barrel. So those two outcomes, 125 is brutal. That's like a tipping point. 150 is a nightmare. And all of this, there's a second part of this question. If that's where we are for 3 days, who cares? If that's where we are for 3 months, we got a problem. So that is the second part of this equation, and we're going to have to wait and see. But I think we're going to know by the end of next week. We're going to have a lot better idea what the answer to this question is. That is what I believe. But I can't know. Nobody knows.
What is amazing, though, is just how good big money is. That is what is amazing.
At taking money from retail investors?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, there's no end to how many times they can take everybody's money. That's the real takeaway. Once again, so let's get specific here, because some unbelievable stuff happened over the last week? We talked about oil. We talked about the war. Now let's drill into our own little industry here. I'm going to talk about this side. IREN to expand processing capacity by 50%. Prepares at the market offering, but I want to just show it to you because I think this is a little more visual. This is their actual filing with the SEC. IREN Limited, up to $6 billion in ordinary shares. This dwarfs anything that has ever happened in our sector of these Bitcoin mining data center stocks. This is the mother lode. And here's what I'm going to tell you. I made the mistake, and fortunately I didn't pay for it because the things went up and down and I got to buy low again. And so IREN is one of my big positions. But several years ago, I sold IREN, not because they had a $6 billion at the market offering, because they had a $250 million at the market offering. This was maybe 2.5 years ago, and their company wasn't even worth $250 million. And so I said to myself, well, that seems like a problem. That seems like something I want to steer clear of. But you know what? They navigated through that with precision. They executed. They did everything they said they were going to do. They did another $250 million. After that, they got to 50 exahash. They've pivoted now to putting everything into AI. This is the biggest market cap, and it's pulled way back. It was as high as $20 billion at its peak. It's 12 billion and change right now, and now they got an at the market offering of $6 billion. So here's the thing. When they did a $250 million offering, it was more than 100% of their market cap. Now they're doing something 20 times that size, and it's half their market cap. So I think they're going to pull this off without a problem. And the market, yes, they did go down, but if we go to what happened this week, they didn't even lose the week. Where are they here? IREN, it's down 10% on the week this week. So to put it in perspective, they're down 8.5% today. Right? So this is what I mean. This was up and down and up and down. So we'll take a minute of a sidetrack, look at what all these stocks did, and then we'll get more specific into what IREN did. ABTC, George.
My favorite company.
Another George call. ABTC in first place. They had news. We'll go through that after we go through the IREN news. I'm beginning to pay attention to what's going on there. Not so much to invest in ABTC, but as a harbinger of what may be to come. So Bitcoin was up this week. We haven't had one of those in a while. Microstrategy was up. It kind of mirrored Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin miners got wrecked. Anywhere from down 4% on a week where Bitcoin was up 4% to TeraWolf was down 16%. CIFR down 13%. Riot 13%. HeII 12%. Marathon 10%. IREN 10%. Cleanspark 7. Bitfarms 7. BTDR 5. HeII 4. So, this was not a good week for the Bitcoin miners. If we look at the year to date, this year has flipped on us. This year started out great. Well, let's not say great. Let's just go take a look. This is January. In January, Bitcoin was down 4%. So by the end of the first month of this year, and this is exactly how last year played out. After January, you thought it's on. By the middle of March, you were like, it's over. And now, that's as of January 31st. Now we're only at March 6th. That's 1 month and 1 week later. Now, all of a sudden, it looks like this. These I left green because they were green last week, year to date. And now they're red. So IREN flipped from green year to date to red year to date. CIFR flipped from green year to date to red year to date. The only things that are green are HeII is up 2%, RIOT is up 12%, and TeraWulf's up 20%. Those are your only three stocks that are positive year to date through March 6th. So February and the first week of March have been a train wreck for the Bitcoin miner / data center companies, despite a few days in the middle that were like some of the best days ever. So Bitcoin down 22% this year, right? We're back under $70,000. We're at 68,000. We've been as low as 60,000. So, this part of it doesn't look good. And, we already did the question of what comes next. So a lot of it's going to depend on what comes next for Bitcoin, but a lot of it's going to depend on what comes next in the AI push. There was a lot of FUD about these AI companies, and some of it's already over, right? There was a 2-month conversation on a bubble, and everybody finally had to admit that conversation was absolutely ridiculous. This does not resemble a bubble. So you might think that companies are spending too much money on AI or high performance computing. That's a separate conversation. A bubble is when the stocks of those companies runs, outrageously. They get to 200 PEs, 1,000 PEs, or some companies that don't even make money are 20 billion, 50 billion, $100 billion market caps. We've seen those kind of bubbles. Nothing that resembles that has happened to any of these stocks across the entire AI space, pretty much. There may be some very, very, very tiny stocks that have exploded, but so we're not seeing that. So there is no bubble. I think for the rest of the year, and to wrap around to where George feels, and I'll let you speak for yourself, but the first half of the year isn't going so well. So we've headed in the wrong direction. I still think by the end of this year, this chart is going to look very good. And it's the position that I had. Here's where 2025 ended. IREN up 285%, CIFR up 218%, HeII up 124%, TeraWulf 103%. These stocks doubled, tripled. I mean, these were big moves. So it wasn't across the board, and there was two big losers in 2025. But here's the thing. As of April 15th, this chart in 2025 was a nightmare, significantly worse than it is this year. Significantly. Everything was down 30%, 40%, 50%. Some of these were down more than 50%. And yet they ended up doubling or tripling or quadrupling. So there's a lot of time left. And that's the dollar cost average concept. If you dollar cost averaged in 2025, it was a winning formula by and large. Now in Marathon, it was not a winning formula. In BTDR, it was not a winning formula. I dollar cost into Marathon all year last year. I'm still thinking it's going to pay off. Time will tell. We'll see. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that. Now, the only thing I'm really buying in this group is BTDR right now, because BTDR was down 48% last year. BTDR's down 35% on top of that this year. I mean, BTDR's gotten destroyed. And if you look at their financial statements, at their monthly operational reports, their quarterly reports, it is my opinion, they have an excellent business model and they are going to be one of the companies that succeeds. That's my opinion. It is being priced as if it's the biggest loser out of all of these stocks, period. And maybe tied with Marathon being priced as the biggest loser. And by the way, Marathon for years was by far the highest market cap. And now it's in 6th or 7th or 8th place. Everybody's passed them. So to me, those two, whether they're great companies, and BTDR, I think has a chance to be a good to great company. Marathon, I'm just counting on them being an average company. I think if they do that, and with the recent announcement, their stock should get to where, the price points that I'm looking for it to go to. I certainly would not say it's the best of all these companies, but I do think it's in the top 3 most underpriced currently. It's just been beaten up so badly. All right, do us a favor. If you just got here, if you have not yet, please smash the like button. It does help us out so much in real time. What's happening, George?
Just reading Sauer's comment. We're up to 60, Tom. 60 people like us.
60 likes. This is it's a rough go. We're going for 100 at a minimum.
Didn't you think it was going to be rough today?
Yeah, well, it's been a rough stretch. That's for sure. It's been a rough stretch. The world is a chaos right now. We haven't even talked about, well, I guess when there's a war, that's always the lead story. But I want to go to, the story of the day today. Because really, the stock market got beat up today for one reason. And it's this.
Well, I thought it was oil.
It's really not oil. I understand oil spiked, but this was the moment the stock market crashed. U.S. payrolls unexpectedly fell by 92,000 in February. Unemployment rate rises to 4.4%. So to put it in perspective, non-farm payrolls in February fell by 92,000. We didn't add jobs. We lost 92,000 jobs. Now I'm going to talk more about this later. So take that with a grain of salt. Compared with the estimate for 50,000, and they're not clear here, but I want to go show you. I want to be crystal clear. If you go to Trading Economics, you will see the consensus was that we were going to add 59,000 jobs. We lost 92,000 jobs. That's a 150,000 job swing. Now, last month, and we talked about this at great length, and the market doesn't care because they get manipulated into doing stupid things. It's not their fault. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Last month, consensus was that we were going to add 70,000 jobs. We added 130,000 according to this report. So the market was panicked. The market tanked on that news. We added too many jobs. The Fed's never going to lower rates. The job market is too strong. The job market is too strong. It's a disaster. Sell the market. So the market crashed on that. Now it's 1 month later. The job market's a disaster. We missed by 150,000 jobs. The job market is a nightmare. We got to sell all our stocks because the job market's a nightmare. We're going into a recession, depression, end of the world. ... So, how about everybody just consider the fact that this report tends to not mean anything. By the way, they revised these numbers 3 times. The next month, the month after that, and then at the end of the year, they go, oh, by the way, all those numbers we told you last year, they were wrong by 1 million jobs. So, forget all that. So the margin of error here is like plus or minus 100%. So I take this to mean nothing. Genuinely. There was a strike. 30,000 people went on strike in California. So that, 30,000 of these are just people that went on strike. That's not factored in. The second thing is this number is going to get revised and revised again because if you can continue, let's see if it talks about it. The U.S. economy shed 92,000 jobs in February, the most in 4 months, following a downwardly revised 126K in January, and a much worse than forecast 59K. And let me find the other part to see if it says it. Here, December was revised from 48,000 So in December, everyone was like, wow, the job market's great. We added 48,000 jobs. Oh, by the way, we lost 17,000 jobs. Or did we? Because why would I believe either of these numbers at this point? Or any of these numbers? I'm just saying, take one data point with a grain of salt, in that you know it's going to get revised multiple times. That's number one. That's an absolute fact. This will get revised the next month, the month after, and then at the end of the year, they do a grand revision. The last 2 years in a row have been the two biggest revisions in the history of the jobs report. So they're not getting better at this. They're getting worse at it. What I would say is zoom out and go like this. If I go to a 5-year chart, now you start to gain some information. Over the last 5 years, look at all these months. Like, these don't look good. 228,000 jobs. That's a low month over the last 5 years. 819,000 jobs. 942,000 jobs. All of a sudden, you will see over the last 12 to 15 months, 9,000 jobs, 33,000 jobs, negative 48,000 jobs, negative 20,000, negative 70,000, negative 140,000, negative 17, and now this month, negative 92,000. Who thinks 2025/2026, the job market has gotten significantly worse based on this data? The Fed, and last month, the talking points were, remember, because you're going to see, last month we thought we were going to add 70 jobs and we added 130,000, although all of those numbers, they're going to revise. So everybody said, the job market's so hot, the Fed is never going to be able to lower interest rates. In fact, there was huge talk, they got to raise rates. We're going to skip the lowering cycle altogether. They got to raise interest. That was a legit conversation. And I was laughing at it because it's ludicrous. We all know what's going to happen. For those of you who don't know, here's the memo. Barring some nightmare scenario, they're going to lower rates significantly. That's what's going to happen. So, again, I don't know the future. Some unworldly thing could happen between now and then to change that trajectory. But all other things being equal, that's what everybody should be expecting. And panicking last month that the job market is too strong, when you look at this report, I mean, there's nothing on this report that doesn't scream the last 15 months, the job market's taken a dramatic turn for the worse. By the way, if you go to inflation, it's the exact opposite. If you look at CPI data, we are now 2.5 full years into CPI at totally normalized levels. So while the Fed sits there and goes, inflation's a bigger risk than the job market, it's laughable. I'm just because only a fool would believe that. This is the data. We're going to do a poll. Let's see if everybody thinks I'm the fool.
Well, who gets the vote?
Really just two choices. Because the Federal Reserve has a dual mandate, although in reality they have a higher obligation than that. They have to do two things. Their dual mandate is to keep a healthy job market and keep inflation in check. That's their dual mandate. So that's why there's two options here. which is the worst concern for the remainder of 2026? Should we be more concerned that there's going to be a weak job market, or should we be more concerned that there's going to be runaway inflation? I'll let you guys decide.
Well, I'll give you my answer. Weak job market because of AI.
Right, and
that's the number one thing right now.
We haven't even talked. Thank you, George. We haven't even talked about AI yet.
AI is, I can't even. But yet you use it for some things and it just gives you the stupidest things. I mean, it's crazy.
Gambit Beer is asking a valid question. Tom, on some level, isn't our job to predict what the market will do, not what the market should do if it was smart? So that's a very, very insightful question. And that is true. We do need to understand whether they should or they should not. The market's going to panic every time we get a jobs report. So that's a great point, Gambit Beer. And just know that. And if, to me, and nothing hit my price targets today, but what I looked for, and it did last month on the jobs report, I was a buyer. This month, nothing hit my price targets, and I was not able to make any purchases off of this jobs report. But if things keep going, I will buy the dip again, like I have been doing for a long time, because I think we're on the way up. So if things go down, if they get worse before they get better, that's just opportunity. But that is a fair point that Gambit Beer makes. It's important to remember and to understand and to have as a part of your investment thesis. And so these are short-term things. The market's totally irrational today regarding the jobs report. But Gambit Beer's right. We knew that they would be. They always are. So understand that. And, you know, if you're looking to hedge that, hedge against it. If you're looking for opportunities to buy something, then buy. You know, so that's a great point.
And I have the next poll for you too, by the way. Who thinks the stock market in the next 120 days is going to be more than like 10%, 50%, 20%?
Up or down, or either way?
Both.
Right now, we're totally exactly 50-50 on this poll. So vote. If you have a device you can vote on, press the like button. If you just joined us or if you have not yet, it does help us out a lot. We can't seem to get to 100 likes anymore, George. I think people don't like us. I think it might be me.
I don't like myself lately, so. Zonner. George, how many jobs will be lost because of AIs, but how many new jobs will suddenly appear too? I think the jobs that appear will be short term. I don't think there'll be long term. Elon Musk this week had a really interesting sit down talk, and what he said was the most craziest thing I've ever heard in my life somebody say, and that was, don't worry about your retirement because in 10 years it's not going to matter. And it wouldn't pin down what he means, but it's just like, I don't know if that means that there's going to be.
Is that like good or ominous?
He wouldn't say what he means.
So,
but he just said, he goes, I'm telling you, spend your money because in 10 years it's not going to matter.
Well, that's not. Could he be any more vague?
I think he thinks that there's going to be this utopian society where AIs and robots do everything. And that we're just going to have to be la 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 la.
I'm just going to guess, and I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't think we're 10 years away from utopia.
No.
I don't think we're 100 years away from utopia. I don't think we're 1,000 years away from utopia. This is the grind. You guys know it. You know, depending on how old you are, you've lived it. You've seen it. You've seen the cycles. This is life. This is the deal.
Larry, it must means that we're all going to get a check from the government. Well, we just got screwed by the government again by $185 billion or some, whatever it was that was supposed to go back to the citizens in the United States. And the Supreme Court says, sorry, you got to give that money back.
Yeah. That I think people were pretty much counting on that tariff money being distributed to the citizens. And now the Supreme Court has ruled otherwise. Now, that doesn't mean the government can't give us money anyway, but it won't be the tariff money.
Oh, dude, you get me down this. It gets really dark in here when we start talking, and you just don't want to think about it. Just have a good weekend, man. That's all I can say.
That's
all great.
It's all good. That's right. Let's not get too concerned over any one. Okay, let me show you a couple of things that I think are a result of this. So here. All right, not here. This is not it. Here. San Francisco Fed's daily says jobs report complicates interest rate call. So the consensus has been no rate cuts, later, rate cuts later, maybe no rate cuts. Maybe we're going to raise rates. We'll see what happens. But here's one of the Fed members saying, this kind of complicates things a little bit. San Francisco Federal Reserve President Mary Daly said Friday, the weak February jobs report adds to a difficult policymaking environment. In a CNBC interview, Daly did not commit to a position on interest rates, but said a softening labor market combined with inflation still running above the central bank's 2% target complicates future decisions. So what they have to answer is the question that our poll is right now. Every Fed member, when they decide whether or not they're going to lower interest rates, has to decide which one of these is more probable, a weak job market or runaway inflation. If it's a weak job market with what is now, in the past 25 years, historically high rates, in a weak job market, they need to lower interest rates. And a part of the reason it's important to do that when it's time to do that is because the other side of this will come. And there's going to be a time you need to raise interest rates. So if you haven't lowered them in the middle, you don't have anything in your arsenal. You don't have anything to fight inflation with. And that's when inflation runs away, when you do nothing about it, which we saw when they did nothing about inflation and it spiraled out of control in 2022. Remember, inflation's transitory? Well, turns out inflation was a disaster. That's one Fed member. Fed Governor Miron says job losses in February add to the case for more interest rate cuts. Federal Reserve Governor Stephen Miron said in a CNBC interview on Friday that the weak February jobs report bolsters the rationale for the central bank to lower interest rates further. If Miron had his way, the rates would be around neutral, which he deems to be about a full percentage point lower. So not a 25% basis cut, 100% basis, 1 full point, or 4 quarter points, 4 meetings in a row. So that's where this Fed member is at. So understand, all the Fed members are not on the same page, and even the ones that are worried about inflation are admitting this is getting complicated. I think there's one more. Weak jobs report likely to keep Fed on hold in wake of oil price shock. So this is saying a weak jobs report for February squashed the notion that the labor market is stabilizing, but it likely won't push the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates this month. So that much is fair. They're days away from a meeting. It's almost inconceivable that they're going to do rate cuts this month. The market has priced in that there will not be a rate cut this month. So I don't think anybody's thinking that. But I do think what this does is it bolsters the argument to accelerate the rate cuts that we think are coming after Jerome Powell's term is done. He's done in May. And I think that goes to Georgia's second half of the year is going to be better than the first half of the year. We're going to get rate cuts in the second half of the year, in my opinion, unless something totally unforeseen happens. And I don't think they're going to be a little bit. I think it's going to be that 1% that we just heard the last Fed member talk about. I think you're going to get a full 100 basis point rate cut by the end of this year. That's my opinion.
Well, isn't that sad with gas going up, then they don't lower interest rates? That's crazy to me.
They're going to lower interest rates. It may have to wait until Jerome Powell is gone, because obviously he's bent on not lowering interest rates. And he was bent on not raising interest rates when we were at historic levels of inflation. So he was super late then. I mean, hindsight's 2020. That's how it played out. The Fed was unbelievably late. They were 12 to 15 months into some of the most severe inflation, the second worst inflation run this country's had in the last 100 years before they started raising interest rates. So they were late on one side. In my opinion, they are equally late now on the other side. And all of that has led to hardship for everybody. Right? This isn't about the Fed and their pride and who's right and who's wrong. It's about what do we need to do to vitalize the economy, put money in people's pockets, have people prosper. That if that's not everybody's goal, then somebody's doing the wrong thing.
That's not everybody's goal.
Well, that's what they're supposed to be doing over there in Washington. I get it's supposed to. And okay, so circling all the way back to IREN, this is a $6 billion at the market offering. This dwarfs anything that's ever happened. I think $1 billion, I think, is the biggest at the market offering anybody's ever done in this space. But this also came out with that news release. IREN expands AI cloud capacity to 150,000 GPUs. IREN today announced it has entered into a purchase agreement for over 50,000 NVIDIA B300 GPUs that will expand its total fleet to 150,000 GPUs. Time to compute is an increasingly important factor in today's AI cloud market. Early procurement enables IREN to bring cloud capacity online with greater speed and certainty, ensuring deployment timeline remains on track as customer agreements progress. They have agreements. They're looking for more agreements. They're lining up their pipeline to get this stuff done. And if they've proven anything, you can say whatever you want about IREN, but one thing they have absolutely proven is that they can build data centers, they can build good data centers, and they can build them on schedule from a time frame standpoint, which is unbelievably important, as anybody who may be in or around the world of construction knows. Almost nobody does that. So they have a proven track record of doing that. IREN expects to deploy the additional GPUs in phases through the second half of 2026 across its existing air-cooled data centers in McKenzie, British Columbia, and Childress, Texas. The 150,000 GPU fleet is expected to support AI cloud annualized run rate revenue of over $3.7 billion by the end of 2026. So what does that mean to revenue growth? Right, this company's revenue 2 years ago was like $80 million. So in a 3 or 4 year window, they're going to go from 60 or $80 million to $3.7 billion. And it should keep growing substantially from there. Now, to do that, IREN has secured $9.3 billion in funding, $6 billion of which is an at-the-market offering program that they haven't really started raising money with. So hopefully the stock performs well over time so that they get maximum value out of the stock dilution they're going to have to do. But they've been down this road, and they threaded the needle to almost perfection with their previous at-the-market offerings. So I have some trust in them there. And that's where I was very doubtful. That's where I sold and got out of my IREN several years ago. I was very fortunate that it took a huge dip in the middle, and I was able to get back in at basically $6. So I'm extremely happy with that. I'm not selling this anytime soon. Not financial advice, just my personal opinion. So this is what IREN is doing. Scaling to 150,000 GPUs positions IREN among the largest AI cloud infrastructure providers globally and underscores the strength of our vertically integrated platform. So what's the number one thing happening financially in all markets? The answer is AI. There's $650 billion ear noted by just big tech just this year to go into AI infrastructure. They're looking at more than that next year. We'll see how it all plays out. So this $6 billion may sound like a lot, but when there's $650 billion just this year coming into this space, now obviously IREN doesn't need all of that to come to them, but like this says, scaling to 150,000 GPUs makes them among the largest AI cloud infrastructure providers. This is not a miscellaneous play for them. They're not a random player in this space. This could be one of the big boys, which means to me, this could be a $100 billion company, a $200 billion company. Remember, I'm not talking about getting to $1 trillion or $3 trillion, becoming one of the biggest companies in the world. $100 billion doesn't get you what it used to be, right? We just watched NVIDIA run from $100 billion to $5 trillion or 4.5, whatever it was. So, I'm not looking for that scale, but there's an awful lot of room to the upside. So I think getting out ahead of this, being one of the large players in this space, establishing these contracts, having a proven track record I think is going to pay off for them. And their stock did take a little bit of a hit. But again, if we go back and look, if I look at this week, which is when they did this, IREN's down 10%. That's just kind of middle of the road. That's what pretty much everything did this week. So they announced at the market offering 6 times larger than the largest one in the history of this entire industry, and they're down 10%. So to me, I feel like that's not bad at all. By the way, yesterday they were basically flat for the week. All right, that's IREN. Just quickly go through a couple of other things. Cleanspark, one of the only remaining companies that releases a monthly operational update. There's 2 others that do. They haven't done it yet. They mined 568 Bitcoin. However, the interesting part is, and this goes to a larger theme, total Bitcoin sold from monthly production, 553 out of 568. So if I look, here's an article. Cleanspark sold 97% of February Bitcoin production to fund AI pivot. Remember, Cleanspark made a gigantic pivot over to AI, high performance computing, etc. So they do have a big hodl. They haven't eaten into that. I think they got over 13 here. While holding 13,363 Bitcoin, 1,086 of which are pledged as collateral. So they sold this month's Bitcoin. They did not sell their hodl position, so they're still one of the largest holders of Bitcoin out of any publicly traded company. But it is a shift for them to sell basically all of their production for the month. And I think you can expect, as these companies try and build out their AI, and they announced several months ago, they're leaning heavily into the high-performance data center stuff. So a U.S.-based Bitcoin mining company that operates large-scale data centers, sold almost all the Bitcoin it produced last month to generate cash for an expansion into artificial intelligence and high-performance computing. So that is what we have been talking about on this channel relentlessly. The sales generate about $36 million in proceeds at an average price of $66,000, which is awful, right? Bitcoin's low right now, so you hate to sell low, but it's still cash flow positive for them. One of the highest production to sales ratio the company has reported. The sale reflects a broader trend among Bitcoin miners pivoting towards AI and high-performance computing, with companies increasingly selling either new production or reducing their balance sheet holdings. So I want to go to another article. A couple more here. This is not one of them. We'll get to that. Core Scientific, I'll quickly mention this. Core Scientific secures strategic financing with Morgan Stanley for up to $1 billion. So, you know, that's not $6 billion, I understand, but Core Scientific's out there borrowing a lot of money. They need to scale up a lot. So that's something they did this week. Let me find what I'm looking for here. Here we go. This Core Scientific sells $175 million in Bitcoin as AI pivot accelerates. Core still holds under 1,000 Bitcoin, but look to remain opportunistic moving forward. Core Scientific sold approximately 1,900 Bitcoin in January for $175 million at about $92,000 a Bitcoin, much better than CleanSpark did. So not only did they raise this $175 million, we just looked at the fact that now they're going to go borrow another $1 billion. The company is allowing its Bitcoin mining business to wind down and relocates power and capital towards AI data centers and high-performance co-location. This is a part of what we've been talking about. I think several of the companies that we follow, that we have been calling Bitcoin mining companies for years now, because that's what they were, by the next halving, they will not be Bitcoin mining companies. I think at least half of the companies that we look at will have 0 Bitcoin mining machines running by the next halving, and this is one of them. These guys haven't bought a new machine, I think, in 5 years. So they're just winding down their fleet. They're now selling off all their Bitcoin. They're all in on high-performance computing, and it makes sense for them, I think. So I'm not criticizing this, but it's what's happening. And that leads to this article. This came out a few days ago. End of Bitcoin hodl. Public miners going all in on AI, signaling more Bitcoin selling. So I will say there's a little pushback. They provide a chart here. This is a massive exaggeration. The end of Bitcoin hodl, public miners going all in on AI. There has been a monumental shift to AI. Having said that, if you look at this chart, the blue line is each one of these companies' all-time high of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. The gold line is where they are right now. There's really only 5 companies that have had a significant amount of Bitcoin. Marathon, they're still maybe 1% off of their all-time high amount of Bitcoin they've ever held. So Marathon is hodling. HeII, I think they're still exactly at 100% of their all-time high. They have over 10,000 Bitcoin. They're still hodling all of it. RIOT Platforms, you can see they're a little off. They've maybe sold 5% of their Bitcoin. They have around 18,000 Bitcoin. CleanSpark, we just looked. Although they sold all the Bitcoin they mined this month, they haven't dipped into their hodl. They still have 100% of their hodl from all time. So So they're at their all-time high. The only company that's actually moved from a hodl position to a non-hodl position is Core Scientific, which we just read. They sold $175 million worth of this stuff in January. So those are the only 5 companies that actually had a significant holding in Bitcoin, significant being more than 5,000, and 4 out of the 5 were more than 10,000. Marathon over 53,000 being the highest, and they're the second largest holder of Bitcoin of any publicly traded company, only behind Strategy, formerly known as Microstrategy. So, yes, companies are shifting. These companies are shifting. We know it. We've been talking about it, but I just think it's worth putting in perspective, saying the end of Bitcoin hodl might be a little bit of an overstatement versus the reality of what's happening. But we just looked at several companies that are shifting and focusing their resources on what they believe is going to be a bigger part of the future, especially as Bitcoin economics is awful right now. There's just no denying it. Meanwhile, I'll leave you with this. American Bitcoin expands their mining capacity by an anticipated 12% in exahash with 11,298 additional ASICs. When's the last time anybody's seen one of these press releases? Remember, this was all we saw in the Bitcoin mining world in 2020, 2021, 2022. And then things started to hit a brick wall for a little while. Then Bitcoin came back, a lot more announcements. Oh, we're getting to 50 exahash, right? IREN got to 50 exahash. CleanSpark got to 50 exahash. BitDR's over 60 exahash. Marathon's over 60 exahash. Riot got to 36 exahash. But now everybody has slammed on the brakes. None of those other companies are buying machines. ABTC, American Bitcoin, is buying ASIC miners and plugging them in. So you can see additional ASICs expected to add 3.05 exahash at 13.5 joules per terahash. So that is good. That is far better than the network average. It's better than most companies' average. Their fleet right now is at about 16 joules per terahash. 15 is the best I've seen out of any fleet. 16 is right there. 15, 16, 17. That's a really good spot to be in. That will not suffice at the next halving. So by 2028, all these companies are going to have to improve the efficiency of their fleet. So you can see these new machines are a little better at 13.5. My point of this is they're adding, this is a pure play Bitcoin mining company. It's the only one left. They don't have any infrastructure. Remember, they're a subsidiary of HeII. So HeII, they get all their power, all their infrastructure from HeII. They mine the Bitcoin. They own the Bitcoin miners. They mine the Bitcoin. They don't own the data centers. They don't own the power. They buy it all from their parent company. But while they're doing this, Trump-backed American Bitcoin board member scoops up stock following earnings. So I think this is fair to look at because we criticize all of these people for taking stock compensation, diluting. Board members Justin Mateen and Richard Bush bought roughly 1.6 million shares after the trading window reopened following the Bitcoin miners' latest earnings report. So these are only about $1 a share, but that's $1.6 million that board members are putting into the company. They're not getting free shares. They're not selling their shares. They're buying Bitcoin mining machines and buying shares in their company. That is one of the reasons that this week they by far outperformed every single one of these companies. So I'm not saying that that's going to be the trend going forward. I'm just saying somebody out there thinks it's not the end of the world for Bitcoin and that one day, sooner than later, Bitcoin mining will become highly profitable again, as it has been in the past. The Bitcoin economics are at one of the all-time lows, which is why I do think we have bottomed out of the bottom of a crypto winter. I know this one doesn't look like previous crypto winners. This cycle, if that's true, doesn't necessarily look exactly like previous cycles. And I'm going to show you one more chart that does show that this would be the bottom for Bitcoin.
As you transition into that, Gamut Bear just said something interesting. What is the strategic reserve? And I used to keep track of it all the time. I don't anymore. But what's interesting is what AI says. It says the U.S. holds not just the strategic reserve, all the oil that they have. 83.7 billion barrels of proven oil reserves right now. That's the 8th globally ranked for anybody. So, but what's crazy is we have about 400 million barrels in a strategic reserve. You know how many years it would take us to go through our reserve, Tom?
This is why I'm saying, like, even if this does last for weeks or months, we do have a giant reserve. We don't like to we don't want to drain our reserve. I think all of this is going to resolve before then, but there is a backstop, and we're not the only one that has a reserve. And by the way, most of the oil in the world is still being pumped right now. It's not like everybody just turned off every oil well in the world.
Yeah, it's 11 years. It's 400 barrels. So it's probably like 3. No, I would imagine it has to be more than 30 days. But the whole reserves, the whole infrastructure, Exxon, Hess, Mobil, whatever the name of them are these days. That's crazy. Who knew that? That's crazy. So it's just everything. It's just smoke and mirrors.
We have like 10 times as much oil left in the ground as we thought there was in the whole world 60 years ago. I'm not dismissing the fact that there's a finite amount of oil. I understand that. I'm just saying that reports of imminent doom.
Lifetime.
Right. Oh, here's one for you, George.
Go ahead.
Tether taps Deloitte for the first USAT reserve report.
Really?
Now, it's not what, it's just, this goes to George's point. And George has been arguing Tether doesn't really get an audit. When are they going to get an audit? When are they going to get an audit? So this looks like they're getting an audit, but guess what? And Deloitte obviously is one of the big four. So, that's a highly prominent firm. But what are they doing? The report is a third-party attestation which provides a snapshot of reserves at a specific point in time rather than a full audit of the company's financial statements. That's part one. Part two, Tether has released its first reserve report for its U.S. registered stablecoin, USAT, which
they're never opening those books.
Right, which is 17.6 million in reserve. The 180 billion or whatever it is, no, they didn't do that one. So
yeah, they're never going to do it.
This is something George has complained about, and people have pushed back and said, "Oh, everything's above boards." And I'm not saying that everything isn't above boards, but they have never had an audit. And even what they just did right now it says right here, it is not an audit.
Ronald Reagan said it best: "Trust but verify."
That's exactly right.
I trust him as long as I get to verify it. I'm going to run, Tom. I'll see you guys.
All right. Have a good night. Have a good weekend, George.
You too.
So we'll just wrap up here. Which is the worst concern? So this was, I'm going to call it basically a tie. A weaker job market, 54%. Runaway inflation, 46%. Within the margin of error. And for a long time, we were at 50-50. So we're pretty split on which one of these as a group, which one of these is the bigger concern. You guys are in the same spot the Fed is. So a lot of these 50-50 type polls lead to the U in FUD is uncertainty. And a 50-50 poll is the definition of uncertainty. So that's kind of where we've been for a long time. If we look at Bitcoin, we're at $68,000. In my opinion, Bitcoin's assignment over the weekend is to hang out in this range and see if we can make a run back over 70,000 next week. There is the tendency sometimes for Bitcoin to drift downward over the weekend. So time will tell. In the meantime, everybody, thank you so much for joining the stream. Even you can still smash the like button on the way out the door if you'd be so kind. So thanks so much for watching. Special thanks to all the members. Thanks for taking this very long journey with us. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. And to the members, we will see you guys Tuesday afternoon.